Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
And this is Jack from Emails That Sell.
Episode 15, Unconventional Applications of Cold Emails. You want to kick things off, Jack, because you wanted to do this cast initially.
Yeah, and the biggest reason I wanted to explore other ways that cold email can change your life is I think a lot of people see it as a lead gen tool or a sales tool, and then that's it. But the truth is, there's almost nothing it can help you do when it comes to connecting with other people. So because of that, it's a really powerful tool to do a whole lot of things that I think aren't talked about in the cold email world. So with that, there's sort of two worlds that it can help you in your business, your professional life, and then your social and kind of everything else. But yeah, for now, I mean, just looking at it from how to improve your business or your career, there's quite a few ways that cold email might help outside of, landing you leads and customers. So, Jeremy, this is kind of an interesting format, but maybe we can just go one for one, just sharing different ideas.
Oh, for sure, I'd love it. I got so many stories of QuickMail. That's going to be awesome.
Okay, well, good. Why don't you start off with let's say the first unconventional application of cold email for you on your list?
I think I will start with probably on it's personal, and so I got one that was at the beginning of QuickMail. I actually looked at all the sequences, like everyone. Whenever someone was creating a sequence, I was just looking and then discovering why they were using QuickMail or what they were using it for, and I was up for a few surprises. I remember the biggest surprise I had was like someone buying like a yearly license. And then I look at this sequence, and it was something like announcing a gay marriage in Hawaii to 200 people from his family and around. I was like, okay, wow. Not quite the kind of thing I would expect from a cold email campaign. But
right.
There we are.
Okay, so it's a wedding invitation replacement. Okay.
And the second thing from a work related was just someone trying to find a job, and that person was applying to every dentist in and around, I think in the same state in the US, just sending, it's like, hey, would you need like, I don't know exactly what title it was, but it was, a title of someone helping at a dentist office, and I thought that was clever as well. It's not actually what I intended when I actually started QuickMail, so I enjoyed those early ones.
Sure, and something I've seen used really effectively in cold email has been connecting with people at conferences. So Twitter will tell you who's attending a conference that you're going to be at. Also, you can probably download a whole list of attendees somewhere and get their emails. But it's really nice to have conversations started before you even show up at that city for the conference. So if you're attending something somewhere, try sending out a few emails to get some conversations going. So when you land, you already know who you're looking forward to sitting down with and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I actually remember at the beginning as well, someone actually purchased QuickMail, again, a yearly license, one of the very, very first one. And we were discussing, we were setting the campaign, and I explained him how to do things, but he didn't change his template. So he actually sent it to a lot of press, because he was actually on the exhibition side of the conference, and he sent it to a lot of press and said, hey, wouldn't that be nice if we have a chat together? We are going to be exhibitor over there. But he forgot to actually change the name of the template, and he was using like, hey, first name with everyone, like as first name, not replacing everything. And he was like coming back to me and he said, Jeremy, I made a critical mistakes. And I said, what was that? He said, I forgot to change the first name by, the actual code. So, I sent like 200 emails. I blasted to. But I say, this is awesome. That gets you something to speak of, when, to start the conversation. And that's a goal of a cold email. So he had a few responses back from that because it was early times of cold emails. And it turned out pretty fun, actually. So that was a good conversational opener.
Sure. And another application I actually used before I was in the cold email world. It was back when I was just a traditional email copywriter. I had read a book of copywriting from an author that I really respect. And I decided to just send him an email, sort of getting his take on, okay, so, copywriter has a couple questions. And really, I just wanted to find out how he got to where he was as a copywriter and advertiser. And he responded with, I think, like a 5-paragraph message and gave me ideas on where to go for finding good customers and sort of retainer-based work. And I think the email worked really well because he probably saw himself a little bit in my message. So I was just completely blown away from becoming a stranger who had just picked up a copy of this guy's book to actually getting some really detailed free advice from someone who's really highly respected in my mind about it.
Yeah, actually reaching mentors is huge. They sort of like feel compelled to give back because they remember all the struggle they've been through. And if you can come and actually one of the best campaign initially on QuickMail was like a question from a fellow video game developer, and he was contacting like older video game developers, and he was just having his master in video games, and he used that to sort of like not necessarily get a foot in the door, but at least start building some networking links and so on. I thought that was like super cool, and he had like 70%, 80% reply rate.
Oh, that's great.
So something pretty big.
Yeah, and here's another sort of unconventional cold email. I had a project where I wanted to get a website highly ranked on Google years ago. And anytime we released a new article, I would find other websites that had similar content. And I would just send them an email saying like, hey, like sent you link to XYZ article. Like I figured you'd want to know that we wrote a piece that's got, 15 more tips on it or whatever it was. And I just said, if you'd like to see it, I can send it your way. And that really basic cold email landed us a ton of backlinks with blogs that were getting a lot of traffic and sites that we probably shouldn't even have been mentioned on. So, that's, I think if anyone's curious, it's like called the skyscraper technique. You can Google it. But
that's awesome. I really love it. Do you think it still works nowadays when competition is a bit more, a bit fierce?
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer. But I think at the end of the day, if you have a website, it's kind of your job to make sure it's as good as it can be. And if that means that there's another amazing piece of content out there that your readers would enjoy, I think people will always feel good about sharing that. So I think if you've got something worth talking about, just using cold email could be a way to start that conversation. And along those same lines, I actually have a recent example where I used cold email to get an article published on Discover.org. And Jeremy and I sat down and wrote this email together. It took a while, but it ended up landing us an article that was featured on their blog, and I've got the email here that I can read through. It's okay. So it says, "Hi Tracy, I know this is out of the blue, but we're both in the email world, and I think your audience might enjoy this. I just got back from Tokyo where I filmed a cold email course with the founder of QuickMail, who's CC'd in this message. We'll probably add your tool in the resource section of our course, but that's not why we're reaching out today. Before going to Tokyo, we had a goal to set up 10 meetings with startup founders in Japan using nothing but cold email outreach. We had no connections, spoke very little Japanese, And in the end, we managed to secure 19 meetings and even had to cancel most of them because we also had to shoot our course. We're writing an article that outlines how we did this. Since your audience sends cold email too, do you think this is something they would be interested in? And that ended up getting the conversation going with their content marketing manager and led to the article being posted, I think, a couple of weeks ago. So I think this still works.
Yeah, and you told me this was the second most shared blog post or something like that.
Second most shared piece of content on their blog so far. So that was a huge win and for both of us, which is really cool. And along the same lines, like you can use it to get links, get articles on popular blogs, but you could also use it to get interviewed on a podcast or even just, we talked about like meeting mentors, but you could also use it to meet peers so that you could start a mastermind group in your city or elsewhere. And these are sort of like simple campaigns that you could put together, but just imagine if you were able to meet 3 other people in your city who were just as passionate about the kind of business that you are. Like that's pretty monumental impacts that you can have on whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah, there's really big thing that can start with a simple cold email, like we just mentioned with Discovery Org, for example. But there was another successful campaign that also took me by surprise, because if you listen to all the typical advice of the Silicon Valley, like you have to have an introduction to talk to VCs and stuff like that, you cannot be surprised by one of the users of QuickMail who actually went and raised money doing purely a cold email. It was really slick. It had like a link to your deck that also had like a password and stuff, and that was like really super well done. It was like no fuzz, just pure stats. Hey, we got those sort of data. Are you interested in talking? Here's your deck. Give me a call. It was like
Brilliant.
Simple like that. I just love it. And so I reached out to the guy and I say, hey, what was the result of that? I say, oh, that's cool. We're closing a campaign. We raised enough money. That was super cool to hear.
Yeah, as opposed to doing like a road show where you're trying to travel over the country and get funded. But
yeah, and it may not work with everyone. It just worked with him, and I thought that was awesome to find some counter example to popular belief.
Yeah, so that's great. Really and some applications on the more like social side is like anytime you're traveling to a new city, I find like it's a lot of fun to contact others in your tribe. So maybe it's other marketers or other yoga people or whoever it is that you kind of relate to, using email to sort of ask them for tips or any recommendations for co-working spaces or place to eat. I find that people are really helpful to pass along information, especially if they can relate to you. You're just coming from a different place.
Yeah, plus it's timely, and it's not like you may be sending cold email, but the people won't think like, oh yeah, he's traveling every Monday to London, so it's kind of like a cold email blast. It's like, no, it's still something that is timely, an event that happened. Like I'm traveling, I'm there. There's a time window, so there's a lot of really positive influence factor that all play together. And like Jack said, if you reach out to your peers, then that resonates quite strongly, and you may actually make some great connections along the way, and it all starts with a cold email and has nothing to do with.
Yeah, exactly. And I think these principles apply to cold email if you're looking to generate leads and sales from it as well. We talked about relating to your audience, not asking for the moon in your first email, and just providing some value up front. And I think, yeah, it's going to apply whether it's for work or for anything else.
Yeah, there is another example I'd like to throw in the mix as well. Is a lot of time founders are struggling for communicating with their existing clients, and I'm saying founders, but it could be like a yoga studio willing to communicate with and get basically feedback. And you can you have most people actually are using like marketing automation tool like MailChimp and things like that, but it's not the same as an email coming straight from the founder or from someone else from the team. So that's again like a good way to sort of like cold email to someone who is like a bit more warm, of course, because he knows your product, but still you haven't had a contact with that person and an exchange, and that's a good way. And similar to that is contacting people who's been on your webinar. So you have their email. It was a one-way communication. It's a great thing to just, come back and say, hey, I noticed your name on the webinar. Is there anything else you would have wished, that webinar, or did that webinar answer all your questions? Those sort of things are actually really nice and well appreciated.
Along the same lines, if somebody is going to book a call with you, let's say later this week to talk about your product or whatever that may be, you can actually use cold email to warm that person up so that by the time they sit down with you, they're more familiar with what it is that you do. So like I've used some cold email to just share like, by the way, here's an article that I think kind of sums up this problem in your industry, or here's a link to a podcast episode that we just recorded that could be highly relevant, and I look forward to talking with you on Thursday. Like that sort of sets up the conversation with a lot more context, so that they know that you know your stuff, or that it's basically a chance to help them out before you get on the phone with them.
Yeah, absolutely love it, to sort of like pre-wire the meeting so you make sure that you're going to get the most value out of it. Absolutely love it. Hey, one other thing that we haven't thought of necessarily is we're always talking like about someone who has a business, but you could also think of someone who wants to start a business. So you could start a business on side of your existing job. So you may have like the entrepreneur vibe, and that happens a lot in QuickMail too. Like someone who has a business or has a job, but wants to start a business on the side, and cold email is a sort of like great way to test the water at a large scale very quickly, so you know if a market resonates with you or not, and without necessarily searching for sales, but more like understanding that market and seeing if there is.
So it's almost like taking a little bit of the risk out of the equation if you're thinking about quitting your job and starting a company.
Yeah, and one really cool strategy for that, and it's kind of a black hat stuff, or maybe we'll call it gray. But it's basically the idea of the mouse and whisker stuff, which is basically you sort of disguise yourself as a potential client to them. And I used that when I was doing cold email at the very beginning, and I sent an email to financial planners just to figure out, are those guys actually listening to their email? Are they actually replying to their emails, and do they read their emails? So I use a one-liner like, do you do transition to retirement? And because everyone thought like I was a potential client willing to retire, they started like bombarding me with like PDFs explaining me how great their company were, that where I should go with them and stuff like that. So I had like 80% reply rate, and I was like, gee. So that's a good way to sort of like test the water and figure out if your market is receptive, or if it's if it's interesting to
right,
to those people.
Or if email works with that industry, for example.
Yeah,
Jeremy, I think we've covered quite a few unconventional applications of cold email here, and hopefully you're feeling inspired to try cold email for other parts of your life that you may have not considered before.
Totally. Awesome cast, Jack.
Great job, Jeremy.